and left my country, I left with the intention of helping people understand the principles, spiritual and mental principles that underlie good health. I knew very, very little about nutrition. I knew very, very little about the other aspects because we're not trained that way as medical doctors. But all that changed when I came across this man's technology. And of course, we're talking about the science of glycobiology and how the key ingredient in aloe, which is a sugar, has helped to revolutionize what we know about health, what we know about the human body. And of course, that led to a series of things, from my speaking about health and to writing a book, to meeting Sherry, and to meeting many of the speakers that we have tonight. And I have to say this, that we would not be doing what we're doing today. We would not be doing what we're doing today had it not been for this man's discovery in the field of nutrition and health. And so I am eternally grateful and also extremely privileged to have him come speak to us about his discoveries. And because of that, I actually asked Dr. Marvin, who many of you know. These are some of the topics that he has treated for us. And I asked him if he would be gracious enough to help host in this very all-important webinar, because I think he has read the book, as I have, but he has been teaching about the whole field of nutrition and health for a long time. And so I asked him to do it, and he has graciously agreed to help to host the webinar. So Sherry and I will be in the background while Dr. Marvin takes care of business. And again, Dr. Marvin, thank you again. As a matter of fact, Dr. Marvin is really the man behind having Dr. McAnalley on the webinar tonight, so we're extremely grateful to him for that. Sherry, would you like to go ahead and introduce our speaker tonight?
I would be honored to. Dr. McAnalley received a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and Math in 1968 from Angelo State University and a Master's in Natural Science in 1973 from New Mexico Highlands University as an NSF Fellow. Dr. McAnalley received a PhD in Pharmacology, Toxicology in 1978 from the University of Texas Health Science Center in Dallas as an NIH Fellow. Dr. McAnalley also received post-doctoral training in Forensic and Toxicology at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Dallas. Dr. McAnalley also served as adjunct faculty at the University of Texas Health Science Center, Southwestern Medical School. Dr. McAnalley worked for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, where he served as the regional ecology expert. While at the U.S. EPA, Dr. McAnalley evaluated hazardous waste sites, prepared scientific support for enforcement cases, and gave testimonials on behalf of the United States government. He served as research director for Carrington Labs, where he developed the first marketed hydrogel wound dressing. He based his technology on aloe vera, a plant used for centuries in herbal management of wounds. More than 20 years later, hydrogels have become commonplace around the world as an important standard of care for topical and oral wounds. Additionally, Dr. McAnalley identified ace-mannan, the active ingredient in aloe. As a result, he developed ace-mannan hydrogels and wound cleansers for humans and animals. In 2005, after having been awarded more than 55 patents for technology associated with natural source health products, Dr. McAnalley focused his attention on improving hydrogels for management of pain in oral lesions. He worked with Dr. Hall and other experienced dental specialists to learn the unique needs of dental practitioners and the needs of their patients. Dr. McAnalley relied on his training in chemistry, pharmacology, and toxicology, and on his 30 years' experience in developing healthcare products derived from plant sources. He worked from his conviction that to be effective, and this is a quote, the physician must start from nature with an open mind. Dr. McAnalley has authored 11 books and/or book chapters, has authored and sponsored 66 peer-reviewed manuscripts, and presented or sponsored 96 papers at international meetings. McAnalley has received 25 U.S. patents and 30-plus international patents, and has 4 additional international patents pending, all been commercialized. We are incredibly honored to have you with us tonight, Dr. McAnalley. So we'll hand it over to you, Dr. Marvin, at this point.
Yes, thank you, Sherry. It's with great pleasure that I attended a dinner celebrating the writing of this book in March. And ever since then, I've been anticipating the publication of the book. And I started reading this book about a week and a half ago, or some such a matter. And it was a great treat to read this. I wish I had had this 5 years ago, but we always can look backward. Anyhow, you're going to get a real treat tonight if you're interested at all in plant medications, taking from plants. So I want to introduce Dr. Bill H. McAnalley. Dr. McAnalley, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Marvin. I would like to first start by laying a little bit of groundwork behind the book. This is an educational book, and it's written where both the scientist and the layperson can understand the science behind aloe. If you read the introduction to each chapter and the summary, you get the basic principles taught in each one of the chapters. And then if you'd like to know the science behind each summary, it's provided in the chapter as well as all the references. We have over 300 peer-reviewed references. And I remember when I started my research over 30 years ago, we first isolated the active component, and it was polysaccharide. At that time, polysaccharides weren't known to have these effects, and it was kind of scary, you know, talking to my peers. I remember going to Southwestern Medical School and talking to some of the pharmacology professors and going over my theories, and they said, well, you know, you have to believe in your work. And since that time, universities and major centers all over the world have validated the science behind aloe. And what we tried to use in our references were the latest and the most current references to support the chapter, each one of the chapters. And you'll find our references are truly from every major medical center, you know, across the country. So we're real blessed. Because when it first started, I thought, you know, maybe we're wrong. But now, as we went through each chapter, we had to cut back. This book was hundreds of pages long, and it was too long. So we spent a lot of time going through each chapter and cutting back and leaving what was really required to get the points across without overdoing it. And I'd like to thank Dr. James Garriott, who is a adjunct professor at the UT Medical Science Center in San Antonio, and Dr. Robert Murray, who's the main author of Harper's Biochemistry text. Both of them went through our work, our manuscript, to make sure that it was truthful, balanced, not false and misleading. So it meets all the criteria for a good educational book. It provides the science behind aloe. I'd like to cover the different classes of products. The oldest product in aloe is the anthraquinones, or the laxative. It was used for thousands of years as a laxative. Then the second class is it was approved topically in wound healing. And most of you are familiar with its uses as a nutraceutical or as a dietary supplement. And we have received approval for ace-mannan as an injectable. And of course, the injectable product's not the same thing as an oral product. Like if you have salt and take it as food, that's a dietary supplement. If you put salt in an IV, you know, now it's regulated as a drug. So we took the ace-mannan molecule and got it approved for cancer in dogs and cats, And we also had it approved for Marek's disease in chickens, which is a herpes virus-induced lymphoma. So this book covers the science behind all of those classes of products. And, I'd like to bring out the difference, too, between a food and a drug. Both foods and drugs affect structure and function of the body. However, every food can restore balance of biochemical processes without affecting the other aspects of physiology. Drugs may restore balance in one area, but usually cause an imbalance in another. This usually requires additional drugs to counter this effect. This is why some patients require more and more drugs and many times end up with more problems than when the treatment for the original condition was started. That's the advantage. If you can use nature's food to maintain health, that's the best thing. Another difference in a drug is you take a drug to help restore balance when you've gotten it out of balance by not using the right nutrition or for some other reason, but you want to get off of that drug as quick as you can. If you're taking a dietary supplement or a nutritional supplement, you need that every day the rest of your life. It's not a drug. So taking polysaccharides, vitamins, and minerals, those are required every day just like you need oxygen. So you shouldn't look at these products as if you were looking at drugs. So I just wanted to lay that background to start with. Then, the history, aloe has been used for 6,000 years or longer. It was recorded in writings more than 6,000 years ago in drawings. In 2,200 years BC, aloe was written in clay tablets in the Sumerian records, and they talked about its health benefits. In the Evers Papyrus around 1550 BC, it was talked about, and its health benefits were very similar. In modern times, if you look at the different uses, they're very similar. Exactly where aloe started and where it came from, you can find it all over Africa, southern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Madagascar, and the island of Socotra. That's a little island at the Horn, between the Horn and Yemen, and that's where Alexander the Great was told by Aristotle that he should make sure that he had enough aloe for his military uses. And you can go to that island today, and they have a group of Greeks that still speak the same language, almost identical to when Alexander moved them to take care of his aloe. So it has had a long history, and it's been used for many different indications. And I just have a few of them. These are the ancient uses. It was used for arthritis, gout, acne, peptic ulcer, psoriasis, dermatitis, headache, itching, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, hair loss, indigestion, burns, mouth disease, and high blood pressure. I thought it was interesting. When I developed Ace Mannin, I didn't file a claim on Ace Mannin for hair loss, and a French company, since we didn't file it initially, claimed Ace Mannin as a hair loss product, and they wanted to sell it to us as one of the uses. But I hear a lot of people, that they claim that it's helped their hair. And then it wasn't until the 1930s that clinical testing for aloe's efficiency was started. Positive results in radiation and thermal burn studies were were very impressive. In the 40s, astonishing results in the management of radiation burns and radiation dermatitis were published in the literature. And in the 60s, treatment of peptic ulcers, dental conditions, chronic leg ulcers were reported. And what was interesting is they had great results with fresh aloe, but the processed aloe, in many cases, did absolutely nothing. So they issued a challenge. They said, it looks like that with today's technology, someone would figure out what was in aloe and what made it work. So I thought I would take that challenge on. And what we did is we used the stomach ulcer models in animals. You can induce stomach ulcers and treat them. And we used skin explants. We take pieces of skin, grow it in a petri dish, and then add different fractions of aloe, and we would test what we extracted, and we would test the remainder. And sometimes what we extracted had no activity, but what was left had the activity until we finally came up with polysaccharide ACE-man. The modern uses for aloe has been in burns, just various skin conditions, breast cancer lesions, pain control, wound healing, poison ivy rashes, ulcers, and pruritus. Then, in addition, we talked about the uses for ACE-man. These were general modern uses. I just thought I would show you a cross-section of the gel. You can see the leaf, the yellow anthraquinones, and the gel is held here in this parenchyma, and it is made up of polyacetylated mannan. It's produced by leucoplasts, which are white chloroplasts, and they just sit there and generate that like a long piece of spaghetti, and it is huge. It's millions of Daltons long. There were 4 aloe species used historically: Aloe barbadensis Miller, Aloe Periot Baker, Aloe ferox, and Aloe arborescens. This is very popular in the Asian countries. But Aloe barbadensis Miller is even grown now in the Asian countries because it has more of the active ingredient. Each leaf of aloe vera consists of 2 major components: the outer green rind and the inner leaf gel. The yellow sap, which is in the outer green rind, is used as a laxative stimulant. They used to dig a hole in the ground and lay an animal skin in there and then cut the leaf sap and let the yellow sap drain. And then the gel was thrown away. They would take that yellow sap and dry it, and they sold it all over the world. It's a very well known laxative. However, since it acts kind of like X-Lax, it's been replaced with fibers. A high fiber diet is preferred over the yellow sap. Inner leaf gel, parenchyma, is where the cellular organelles are found, and they're rich in lactose. The cell walls, which makes up the pulp, kind of like you can buy orange juice with pulp or without pulp, is made of galacturonic acid, and that makes up the pulp of many different plants. And then the clear gel is where the ACE-mannan, the high mannose content product is found. And a lot of people, talk about other companies' products or products all over having ACE-mannan in it, but they may or may not have a significant amount. The aloe has been shown to be toxic to fibroblasts, so it's not good to put a laxative on your skin. The inner gel is where the healing property of aloe resides, and it's 99.5% water and 0.5% solids. And of that 0.5%, about 0.2% of that is ACE-mannan. So, out of 1,000 pounds of gel, which takes about 2,000 pounds of leaves. Out of 1,000 pounds of gel, you're going to get 2 pounds of Ace Mannan. So if you've got a good, powdered product, that 2 pounds, comes from around 2,000 pounds of good aloe leaves. There are other solid components that were found. Aloe was rich in calcium, magnesium, had a few, of the 20 essential amino acids, some proteins, lectins, waxes, fatty acids, pherols, and carbohydrates. That makes up the other 0.3%. The major component, 0.2% of that 0.5% is Ace Mannan. So when we isolated the Ace Mannan fraction and then tested it on our skin models. We tested on our ulcerative colitis models. And since that time, Ace Mannan has been developed, as I mentioned earlier, for Marek's disease, which is a herpes virally induced lymphoma. I was very excited about that product when we developed it. We vaccinated billions of chickens, but apparently we eliminated the disease because they haven't had any outbreaks, so nobody's buying the vaccine. So it's kind of like developing iron lungs for polio. You can be too successful sometimes. Or some, I'm just joking. I wish we could eliminate every disease. Commercially processed aloe has had a problem. I've been a member of the Aloe Science Council, trying to get them to adopt a real good assay. And I helped develop some of the assays that they use. They really, what I'd like for them to do is make sure that they have Ace Mannan in their aloe. In other words, when you buy the product, it can tell you how much Ace Mannan that it had or it contained. Because even in a recent survey conducted by the International Aloe Science Council, they compared it to our injectable Ace Mannan, all of the producers all over the world. We discussed that in the book. And the only consistent finding was the lack of consistency. Many of the products had no Ace Mannan in them at all. And the cheaper processes, they take the whole leaf and they crush it, and then they filter out the unwanted things. And one of the steps in the filtering process is they run it through activated carbon. Well, activated carbon takes out all organics. Everything in there is an organic. And somehow this activated carbon is supposed to leave the good stuff and just take out the bad stuff. But as far as it's concerned, it's going to take out anything that's carbon. And when I test those ingredients, they're really just water that's been extracted from aloe. And then that's what you find in a lot of the products in drugstores. They just want to be able to say that their product has some aloe. And the whole world would benefit a lot if they would read this book and recognize the benefits they could have and ensure that their products contain good quality aloe. And we go through, how to do that. Here are the categories of products that can be purchased. The people, some of them buy whole leaf aloe. They buy it with pulp and without pulp. And you can get it spray-dried, freeze-dried, air-dried, or partially concentrated. For example, you can get a 2X, 10X, 20X, 50X, and the most you can concentrate it is 200 times. However, the process currently doesn't guarantee the Ace Mannan content. And when they talk about aloe, they have to use preservatives, and the preservatives belong to a class of pathogens that are innately toxic. They belong to a class called biocides. And they're in there to kill the bacteria, and they try to do minimum harm to people. But if you take it and freeze dry it. If you inactivate the enzymes and dry it, then you don't have to add the preservatives. So that's one reason the powders would be, in my opinion, the best way to take the products. Cold process was one of the first processes I developed, because at that time we didn't know whether the proteins had any activity or not, and we wanted to preserve the proteins. However, later I found out that the active ingredient was carbohydrate, and when we found that out, the proteins then were isolated, and none of them possessed any of the benefits reported to aloe. So you still have cold process. Hot process requires several hours, and it can break down a lot of the ace-mannan before it inactivates the proteins, because every 10 degrees centigrade doubles the rate at which the mannosidases and the cellulases degrade the aloe until you reach a temperature when they are denatured. So dried aloe products do not require preservatives, and that's why powdered products are preferred by me if you're just looking for aloe. The liquid state requires preservative, or else bacteria will grow. And when you see the word stabilized aloe, that means enough preservatives have been added to control the microbial growth. That does not assure the ace-mannan content. So a lot of companies will buy stabilized aloe, and this company's stabilized aloe may have, 20% aloe in it, and then they use 10% of that, and they say made from 100% stabilized aloe. That means the 5% that's in there was 100% stabilized with preservatives. It may not have had any ace-mannan. So that's why a lot of people say, I took aloe and it didn't do anything for me. Okay, aloe's physiology. We have a chapter on aloe's effects on physiology, structure, and function. And all of your foods and nutrients help support structure and function, like your dietary proteins, lipids, vitamins, and minerals. They serve as aids or assistants to the enzymes, they're cofactors for enzymes, phytohormones, and antioxidants. These are some of the essential nutrients. And aloe vera provides carbohydrates. It serves as food for prebiotics. It maintains and preserves the probiotics, and it maintains a healthy colon. And we're going to talk a lot more about that, how that works. I'd like to remind you that aloe is a source of mannose, and it's one of the rare principal monosaccharides: glucose, lactose, mannose, glucose, xylose, N-acetylgalactosamine, N-acetylglucosamine, and N-acetyluramic acid. These are the 8 monosaccharides used to make glycoproteins and glycolipids in humans. And aloe is a good source for mannose. What's interesting is we go through and show how aloe is absorbed and explain why we need monosaccharides. For a long time, I was taught that all of the hexoses are absorbed, they're broken down, converted to glucose, stored as glycogen, and then used as you need it. However, recently, scientists have identified all types of receptors and transporters in the small intestine that specifically look for mannose and remove it from the GI tract into the blood very rapidly and very efficiently. So, I've found that when nature goes to that much trouble, it's really important. So, mannose is very important in cellular communication. It's responsible for forming the proper structure and function of glycoproteins, and aloe is a rich source of mannose with a high nutritional value, rare in the modern Western diet. So, aloe, is important, and just as we can live on fats, we can live on carbohydrates, we can live on proteins. That's because we have to be able to gain ATP or energy some way. So anytime you have several ways of achieving something biochemically, that shows you how important it is. And when you get through reading this chapter, you'll find out there's a lot of ways of making sure that we have mannose in our blood. And it's very important cellular communication, and its importance will be verified as we go through the next chapters. And to do that, I've always liked to go back to nature. And probably some of the best food in the world is mother's milk. Breast milk. There are a lot of babies who live the first 4 or 5 years of their life on mother's milk. And if you look at what's in mother's milk and study the ratios, it's very interesting that lactose, and if glucose was so important, why doesn't mother's milk have just pure glucose in it? Instead, nature provided glucose as a disaccharide. It's in lactose, which is one glucose and one galactose, and it has to be broken down in order to be used. And when you're first born, you produce lactase, which enables you to break that down. And only the Europeans and some of the other Eastern groups, a few groups of people, maintain lactose. The ability to digest lactose with lactase. What they rely on is a real good culture of probiotics, which can break down lactose. But the Europeans can digest it, whereas a lot of Africans, I know, we used to send dried milk to Africa and made everyone sick. They thought we were poisoning, that's because they were lactose intolerant. Of course, the babies were still nursing from their mother. So if you look at the oligosaccharides, and these oligosaccharides is where you find fucose, mannose, and they serve as food for the friendly bacteria. And where do you get your friendly bacteria? Well, when you're born, you come down the birth canal, you always get some feces in your mouth. And that's from your mother. And that's the friendly bacteria that she uses to digest the food that she eats. So when you quit nursing your mother, you have to live off of the polysaccharides that are in the environment, and the bacteria that you receive from her, will digest the food that she's eating, and more than likely, prior to airplanes where we could fly everywhere, you would eat the same food. So nature designed it where you would get these small beta-linked oligosaccharides that provided time-release, monosaccharides at a continuous manner, just like you get time-release lactose. The reason we have so many children with adult-onset diabetes, that's going up by hundreds %, is because we're eating too much refined sugar. It was designed for us to slowly absorb these hexoses, and nature provided a way by linking them in beta links, so the bacteria slowly digest them. And as they digest these beta-linked oligosaccharides, they make small-chain fatty acids, which we now know provides 70% of the food for the intestines, since they are in they're in a low oxygen atmosphere, then beta oxidation is the preferred source of energy. And if you have a diet rich in oligosaccharides, you'll have a lot of these small-chain fatty acids, which cause you to produce a lot more endothelial cells in your intestine. So you get a new lining in your intestine all the time. If you're not getting these oligosaccharides or polysaccharides, you're not going to get the new lining. You'll end up with intestinal problems. And we'll talk, later about how by simply adding these fatty acids to colitis patients with an enema, they get well. So lipids, monosaccharides, minerals, and vitamins. If you analyze what's in mother's milk, that's probably nature's perfect design. And that's what we need to design the food for the rest of our life after, the way mother did it. Now, cow's milk, which formula is made out of, does not have these oligosaccharides. And that's because cows, have 4 stomachs. They can eat grass after they're a few days old, and they can get their monosaccharides from other sources. We don't eat grass very well. Now, human milk oligosaccharides provide fucose, glucosamine, sialic acid for brain development, and mannose is in high concentrations in mother's milk. And here's just kind of a diagram, showing how probiotics, you come through the birth canal, you get your probiotics, you get them from your mother while you're nursing. She'll have friendly bacteria on her breast. You get them from the environment. And they serve, if you have a real good culture of friendly bacteria, then pathogenic bacteria can't grow. They prevent viruses and fungus. The other interesting thing that we've learned is that these oligosaccharides serve as false receptors. That is, when a pathogenic organism tries to infect a cell, it has to first bind to a cell's glycoprotein, and these oligosaccharides bind them up, and they can't bind and infect the cells. So the probiotics feed back, and they prevent infection. They provide monosaccharides and oligosaccharides, and we now know that we can absorb these oligosaccharides through pinocytosis. We have specific pumps for the monosaccharides. And with mother's milk, they've given labeled milk, that is radioactively labeled and trace these different sugars. And uramic acid is extremely important for healthy brain function. And in fact, breastfeeding has been shown to concentrate the kidneys. If you get mother's milk, these HMOs concentrate in the kidneys where they prevent urinary tract infections. It's been linked to a decrease in necrotizing enterocolitis and other inflammatory diseases in infants. Its research has shown that breastfeeding reduces the incidence of sudden infant death, autoimmune thyroid disease, celiac disease, diabetes, atopic dermatitis, allergies, and other infections that occur later in life. What was amazing to me is that there was a great study done in New Zealand where they looked at children who had nursed 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. And they found that those who nursed 6 months at age 18 had a higher average IQ. Those at 9 months were higher than the 6 months. So not only are they healthier, their intelligence quotient is much higher. And there are many, many studies out now that support that. So breastfeeding reduces the risk of colon cancer, and that's because that's what you hear, high-fiber diet reduces colon cancer. It improves lactose tolerance, can lower serum cholesterol, alleviate food allergies, control irritable bowel disease, and all of these are associated with a good, healthy probiotic culture. So when you're first born, you get your friendly bacteria from your mother. You feed them with mother's milk until you're old enough to eat plants, and plants like aloe and others with beta-linked polysaccharides. They feed them, and the friendly bacteria get nutrients, you get nutrients, and what they digest, they only partially digest it into small-chain fatty acids, which is required for a healthy GI tract. That is the preferred food. Okay, and here is where we summarize this: probiotics, immunomodulation, reduce the risk of colon cancer, and you have to feed these bacteria. Highly refined food, you don't have the beta-linked polysaccharides, and without food, they die. And they're constantly passing through the GI tract, so you need to keep feeding them every day. That's why you need these nutrients every day. But here they are summarized: a supply of small-chain fatty acids. They also synthesize a lot of vitamins you need. Have been shown to reduce colon cancer. The other metabolic effects, they lower the level of toxic immunogenic reactions in the gut. That reduces colon cancer. It enables for lactose hydrolysis. I've heard a lot of people who are lactose intolerant take polysaccharides or glyconutrients, and they can now eat ice cream again. It helps lower the bile salts, helps lower serum cholesterol. This strengthens the innate immunity, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the next few chapters. How aloe can really strengthen your innate immunity, especially we're going to talk about the macrophages or the monosaccharides. And a balanced immune response. This helps alleviate food allergy and control irritable bowel disease. What the mother gives you is processed in a way to provide a tolerogen effect, so that as you slowly eat a little bit of the food that she digests, your body says, okay, this is okay, that's not going to hurt me. Whereas if we start eating these whole foods too soon, it's well known that you get all kinds of food allergies. So probiotics help normalize the intestinal microbiotic composition. This controls irritable bowel syndrome, and the colonization helps suppress pathogens and endogenous and exogenous. If you look at just breast milk, obtaining the HMOs, breast milk provides carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamins, minerals, and it provides not glucose, it provides a beta-linked disaccharide. And see, you breathe oxygen every minute of every hour, 24 hours a day. And you use the oxygen to burn your food. So you should get your food in a time-release manner. Otherwise, why don't we just breathe real hard for 2 hours and not breathe the rest of the day? So you need to balance your food intake with the oxygen. And that's how nature designed it. So lactose, as I mentioned, provides glucose and galactose. This is structural and functional, and this helps in cellular communication with glycoproteins, and it provides a time-release energy source. Then if we look at the oligosaccharides, they provide structure and functional ingredients. Small chain fatty acids, which feed the colon and provide energy for the friendly bacteria. Sialic acid, which now is considered a requirement for early brain development. And I'd like to point out, in breast milk, when you're first born, the mother's milk is very high in sialic acid, which is N-acetyluronic acid. As the weeks progress and your brain develops, the amount goes down. It goes down about half as much. And what's even more fascinating to me is if you're born preterm, like 4 to 6 weeks early, the amount of sialic acid in her milk now is much, much higher than if you were born at term. And that's because the body knows that you left the mother's nutritional support too soon, and so you're going to need more sialic acid. And sure enough, nature is able to provide even for premature birth. The monosaccharides or free mannose provide structure for glycoproteins, and it provides energy. So that's the first half of the book. And the second half, we go into how it works on the macrophage, how it works on viruses, how it is absorbed, how it's handled. If nature didn't plan on us eating these polysaccharides, I don't think she would have built such a complicated system for us to handle all of these sugars. And I'd like to open it up now for discussion, and I have with me Danny, son, and he can talk too. And I'd really like, when we go through some of these drawings, Danny is a plastic surgeon, and he's an excellent artist. All the illustrations in here were done by Danny, all the drawings. And he did a great job. I think these are the best drawings of this type, ever. And I feel so blessed that as we needed different people, like having someone like Rob Murray, to review this book, and his help was just invaluable. Dr. Garriott was the first official toxicologist in the world, and having his look, what I always wanted to do is first do no harm, and that is don't use products that cause harm if you don't have to. And we have other great contributors. Each one of us took sections and wrote them, and then we all went over them together and made sure they linked together. So I'll turn this over now back to Dr. Marvin. Danny, do you have anything to say?
No, Dr. Marvin. Thank you, Dr. McAnalley.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. McAnalley. I first want to mention people have called in and asked about where can we get this book, and the number is 1-800-755-0044. Again, 1-800-755-0044. And when you call in, let them know you heard of the book on this seminar tonight. And the questions that I have, we're still waiting on some of them to come in, so you can, down on the right-hand side of your screen, you can type in any questions you have. I was very, very impressed with the facts you gave tonight, Dr. McAnalley. The oligosaccharides, the HMOs of mother's milk, is just really exceedingly interesting with the correlation with the IQ. Here's the first question. If I want to eat fresh aloe from the plants in my backyard as a daily habit, how many teaspoons of the interleaf gel does Dr. McAnalley recommend?
Well, if you if you can take a few ounces every day, the problem is processing out the anthraquinones, a lot of times people, as you process it, the anthraquinones, which is the laxative, if you get 5 or 6 ounces and you don't just get the gel that's in the center, then it can cause you to lose a lot of nutrients because it works by blocking the reuptake of water, like a lot of the strong laxatives we used to take. So if you could get good gel, I would like to see you take 4 to 8 ounces every day.
That's primarily the good gel, meaning with the lacking of the quinones. Is that right?
That's
okay.
Right.
The next question is, what is the cost of this book? The answer is, one book is $28.97, and 10 books you get a large discount. It's down to $20 a book, and for 18 books you get $15 per book. So that will give you an idea. And again, you call this number 1-800-755-0044. The one thing that interested me, Dr. McAnalley, was how a baby acquires its probiotics. Going through the vaginal canal, and I delivered 2,000 babies in western Kansas, and I had to dig a lot of meconium out of the baby's mouth, and now I see why probably I shouldn't have dug so much out.
Yeah. It's amazing, what Mother Nature knows best. If we just look at it and study it, we'll eventually figure out that God's the master designer.
That's right, and the master designer didn't make any mistakes. We get in trouble, in my opinion, when we mess with that whole regime. But anyhow, I like your theory of first do no harm, which is what I had to swear to when I graduated from medical school. We're still waiting on some questions. I wanted to tell you, Dr. McAnalley, my wife is a good example of the not the irritable bowel, but the lactose intolerance, because she couldn't eat any more than a teaspoon of milk. She was so intolerant, it put her in the hospital with bloody diarrhea. After about 8 or 9, well, it wasn't even quite 8 months, it's probably 6 or 7 months of taking this technology, the Mannins, she is eating ice cream and has ever since, with no problems, none at all. So this is a living example of what you were just referring to. It does change your physiology because it's Mother Nature's food and breast milk.
Dr. Marvin, can I make some comment about
Sure.
The nature that Dr. Bill McAnalley was talking about? Is that a lot of times we'll observe how the baby developed, and why do we have the oral phase, and that oral phase is continuing to supply the probiotic that actually the baby needs for survival. And a lot of times, the baby puts toys in their mouth. They put fingers in their mouth and all that. It's actually not necessarily bad. It is continue to support that, the necessary probiotic for proper body function. And yet today, we start to sterilize everything. Then we start to cause a lot of problems. We're not saying that we should be, we should ignore the hygiene, but we also need to do it in a balanced form so that we don't alter what the nature intended, for the nature to supply us with the proper thing for our survival.
We couldn't cover everything in the book, but we cover that where infants from cultures where they really can't afford all the soap are much healthier than clean. Kids where they're washed all the time. And I guess we're just too clean to be healthy.
Well, Dr. McAnalley, for several years I worked on Indian reservations. Number one, almost 100% of them where I worked breastfed. I didn't see the diseases in children anything like in the general population that I had seen in private practice. So I now relate all what you're telling me. My question comes up, should we give our young children probiotics? I'm saying from the age of, say, 7 or 8 when they can swallow a capsule, or should we some way give them probiotics even if we have to break the capsule open and feed it to them? Is that a recommendation?
I think we should, try to get probiotics on a regular basis, because we see reports all the time where they analyze hamburger meat and it was full of antibiotics. They analyze our foods. They have preservatives in them that kill these friendly bacteria. And, whenever people get sick and take antibiotics, they lose a lot of their friendly bacteria. So it won't hurt to be constantly replacing those friendly bacteria, because you can't have too many.
Right. Well, that's just what I was wondering. I think if I'd had your information from this book when I delivered the 2,000 babies that I did, I'd have every woman breastfeeding, particularly with the information about the IQ difference between 6 months breastfeeding and 9 months. Now, most of the Indians I saw breastfed for 2-3 years, and even longer. I heard some of them that took their babies out of school to breastfeed them when they started the school. So that's kind of an extreme on breastfeeding, but I thought they were kind of weird. They probably knew more than I did. I got one question here that I think you've already well answered. Is can you eat the aloe vera plant? You've covered that pretty well, but you might just make a short comment. I think those stickers sticking on it would kind of be hard to chew, but what is your answer to that question?
Okay, well, a lot of people cut out small amounts of the aloe plant, but especially Aloe arborescens in Asia, and you'll see a few diced pieces in there. And, it's kind of like getting a little rhubarb or something like that. It helps serve as a mild laxative if you don't take excess whole plant. But really what you're after is the gel.
Right. When you cut the aloe and it starts to break down the mannose, does the mannose only break down in the area of the cut of the whole, or in the whole plant? How long before the mannose is replenished or regenerated?
Okay, well, if you have a plant and you damage it, or you'll just stick a hole in it, usually what happens in nature is the wind blows and the serrated edge will hit one of the other leaves and cut it. What you'll see is around that, about the size of a quarter, all the gel will die or resorb, and the leaf will heal over after that, and the mannose will stay in the leaf even though it's been damaged. But if you just take the gel out and stick it on a platter, on a plate, it will all become water, in the next 8 hours at room temperature. So it'll all have been hydrolyzed.
I see. In other words, the aloe heals itself.
Yes.
That's amazing. It really is. It says here, please explain the differences. This is a question from one of our listeners. Please explain the difference between oligosaccharide and monosaccharide, are both glyconutrients. Please explain what HMO means again.
Okay. Again, we cover that in our book, but a monosaccharide is a single saccharide like glucose, mannose, fructose. Those are hexoses. Monosaccharides come 6 carbon, 5 carbon, 4 carbon, 7 carbon. The most predominant is 6 carbon. So glucose is a 6 carbon monosaccharide. If you hook 2 together, you have a disaccharide. If you hook 3 together, you have a trisaccharide. If you hook 10 together, 7 to 10, it's an oligosaccharide. And then if you hook a lot of them together, they're called polysaccharides, like much more than, say, 15 to hundreds. And as a general rule, they break it monosaccharides Di-mono, tri, up to 10 saccharides, and that's where 7 to 10 you start getting oligosaccharides.
I see.
So oligosaccharides are just 6, 7, 8, or 9 monosaccharides hooked together. And in this case, they're hooked in beta bonds so that we can't break them down. The prokaryote bacteria have to break them down.
Great. And then they wanted you to explain what HMO again means.
It's human milk oligosaccharides, and that's explained real well in Chapter 8.
Right.
That's why if you get the book, you can go through all of these. The title of it is Obtaining Monosaccharides from Human Milk Oligosaccharides, HMOs, a prototype for Ace Mannan.
Right.
And since mother's milk, it's hard to argue with how God designed mother's milk. And the question is, why was it designed that way? And then we understand why aloe and these other polysaccharides are designed that way, the way they are.
The great designer, right?
The great designer. The
Now,
great architect.
The great architect of all of us in the world, too. Another question, who do I see to get injectable AC Mannan for cancer?
Okay, it's regulated as a prescription for veterinarians, and a veterinarian, can't treat humans. So, that's where someday I'd like to develop it for humans. What happens is it takes 10 years and millions of dollars, and the patent life was 17 years back then. So we started developing Ace Mannan as a topical product, and it became the world leader for 15 years for all kinds of wounds. And then we developed it for Marek's disease, and that I mentioned was very successful. We vaccinated billions of chickens, and then we eliminated that disease. If we have another outbreak, I'll be able to sell a lot more. And we developed it for animals, but the patent life for a small company was up, and a public company doesn't want to invest money developing a product whose patent has gone, so the company lost interest in developing it because they have to look at their return on their investment. I would love to develop it for humans, but what you have to do is you have to go through all of the approval process for humans.
Dr. McAnalley, I have heard, due to friends I have in Israel, that they have an AC Mannan that is IV. I'm not sure if that's true or not, or whether it's just for research. But I was told they're doing a big research experiment there with AC Mannan IV. And I
That'd be great. I would love to see it come out.
Well, if I can find it, if I can find out the source of that, because I have friends in Israel, I'll refer them to you or give you their phone number or whatever if I possibly can.
Well, we did a big colitis study in Israel.
Great.
And I gave several lectures when I was there, so that would be great. They do some good research.
Sure, they very surely do. Another question, can it reduce dementia-like symptoms produced from Parkinsonism?
Well, now we're moving into another area. This book and all my talk can be used by anyone. If we start talking about other diseases, like dementia, my feeling is it would help people with anything. But, and when we get to the second half, I think a lot of that, will be explained.
Sure.
And, do you have something to that, Dan?
I think this question can be addressed in a little bit different way. Now, a lot of times we see a lot of different people or different company talk about certain substances or something take care of certain problem. And if we look at it this way, as a healthy body requires all those nutrients to survive. Therefore, all those nutrients can treat all those diseases. If you're missing them, then your function is not normal. When your function is not normal, then your body is going to develop disease. So if you are missing those nutrients, when you put it back, then all those function return and all those disease sort of start to go away. So if you really look at it, can vitamin C deal with cancer? Of course, if your body are missing vitamin C as a major problem. Or if you say, some of those important monosaccharides, if you are missing your body and your body don't function properly, then you develop disease. Then those disease can be dealt with when you put those things back. So if truly you look at it this way, any natural food that our body needs can deal with all those diseases because that's what our body needs for proper function.
Excellent. In other words, what you're saying, Dr. Sun, is wellness is what we're dealing with primarily from the cellular level up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is looking at it this way, then what we need to do is focusing on how do we make our body healthy structurally and functionally, then the body will take care of us.
It's just like oil in your car. You know, if you don't put oil in your car, it's not going to function correctly, regardless of what kind of engine or what kind of problem you have.
Correct, yes.
I have another question, Dr. McAnalley and Dr. Sun. How can you evaluate an aloe product that you might buy to determine its AC-mannan content?
Well, we developed an assay that's very simple and presented it to the Aloe Science Council, hoping that they would adopt it so that they could guarantee their product had the AC-mannan content. The problem is a lot of products don't have, and they don't want to adapt a test that shows their product is worthless. So we have a problem with the council. However, the FDA, has established a committee, and it's the official Society of Analytical Chemists, and they belong to FDA and the state labs. They validated this test, and I know that they're going one at a time through different supplements, and a lot of them you'll hear about them. Companies are losing their product because they didn't have in them what they said they had. So right now you're just at the mercy of buyer beware. I would ask the company, I would ask them for proof because that test is real simple. And in fact, Danny and I were thinking about setting the test up. And I know a few companies that do have legitimate products are looking at analyzing products and making that information available.
Okay.
That was one of the last things I did a few years ago, is we published a very simple assay. It's done with a Spec 20, which costs $1,500.
Terrific. Now, I have one more question here. Where can we find out more about IV or intravenous AC-mannan therapy to use in animals with cancer? Where can we obtain information?
Well, just go to the web, or you can read our book, because we have a whole section on it with the references and everything. And we will talk about that. We'll talk about that at the next session.
Great. There's an awful lot more questions. Are you able to go farther tonight and answer some more?
If I can't, Danny can help me.
Yes, Danny's a blessing. I know that. So we've got that. And so could a young child on antibiotics have a whole served adult probiotic capsule safely? Could you give a child, when you give them antibiotics, handle a adult probiotic capsule safely?
Yes, I wouldn't be concerned.
That sounds great.
Because what you're, the capsule doesn't have enough, for an adult or the child. What you do, though, is you supply the friendly bacteria, and then as long as they have the nutrients, they'll start multiplying very fast. Some of them double every 15 or 20 minutes. So
wow.
It's just like when I was growing up, my uncle put in septic tanks, and in high school I used to help him. And in order for a septic tank to work, you would take a gallon out of an existing septic tank of really the bacteria that it needed, and you pour it in a new septic tank, or else it takes a long time for it to start working.
Yes, I was raised on a farm, and I know how that works. We had to do the same thing. Another question, what about using aloe vera gel, AC Mannan gel, and brushing your teeth with it?
That's great. In fact, we make them. That's what I've been doing now. Danny has been helping me. We're making some new products for dentistry, and we have a product out now that we sell to the oral surgeons. And we're doing studies now with periodontal disease and gingivitis, and we have our product, that's approved for that. So it works very well.
And the product's called Socket.
That's correct.
Now, whereabouts could they purchase that if they're not an oral surgeon?
Well, we're working on looking at one for, over the counter.
Okay.
Right now, some of the uses on Socket, it takes a surgeon to recognize those conditions.
Right.
A lot of products are prescription, as you well know, because it takes a doctor to recognize and make the proper diagnosis.
Sure. My son, to give you a testimony, had some severe gingivitis, and he was at a meeting in Dallas when I was at your dinner, and I talked to Danny shortly thereafter. He gave me some of the Socket, which I prescribed myself for my son, and his gingivitis went away in a whisker, just disappeared.
That's what we're seeing. It works much faster than Aloe because what we do is we have much more than, in other words, we have 20 times the concentration that you normally find in Aloe.
Right.
So to get 1 ounce of our product, you need 20 ounces of Aloe.
Okay, could they call this 1-800 number, Dr. McAnalley, to get information about Socket as well?
Yes, they could, and what they ought to do is tell their dentist they want some.
Okay. Have your dentist then call 1-800-755-0044, and they can fix you up if you have any problems of that nature. And now, here's another question. Have there been studies done on toxins in human breast milk?
Yes. There have been studies done on toxins in humans, cattle and all types of animals.
Sure. I have another question. Would it be possible for the mother to be deficient in polysaccharides or oligosaccharides and the probiotics?
Yes, it's possible. But normally the mother, is going to take from herself and give to the baby. But a healthy mother would have good milk.
That's what I was wondering. Would she have sufficient HMOs in her breast milk, even though she didn't have sufficient probiotics?
Actually, a lot of times, because of nature of the mother, this is why we talk about mother is all giving. Is that a lot of times when mother doesn't have actually sufficient nutrient themselves, a lot of times they will provide that in the milk for the baby first. And this is why it's so important for the mother to be healthy during the pregnancy, because to remember the old sayings that the mother is actually eating for 2 people, when they're pregnant. So they really need to be even more careful. And of course, when they are so deficient in those nutrients, then you're going to see a deficiency in the mother's milk.
Okay. Another question. Are cats allergic to, or is the aloe gel toxic to cats?
Not as far as I know. I hear stories all the time of people giving it to their dogs and cats. Now, they probably don't like if you do it yourself, they don't like the anthraquinones. Nature picks the aloe plant where a man with his hands and tools can cut out the gel. Animals don't eat it because they can't eat it without getting the anthraquinones. There are a few animals that do, but they probably don't eat very much.
Yeah. But if the animal is truly getting the gel portion, which is the ace mannan, we have a lot of people who gave their animals with those kind of supplement. They have cats as big as dogs and living up to 19, 20 years old.
Great.
Yeah, and we have our product approved for veterinarians. They give them to birds, cats, puppies. I don't know of any adverse events in any animals.
Mammals.
The only adverse events have been reported from the laxative.
Right. Okay. Would you mention something about the use of internal AC mannan for the arthritic problems of aging?
Well, we're going to cover those.
I figured.
Next time we're going to cover how that works. So
okay.
Be sure and listen, and get your friends to listen next time. But we're going to go through the mechanism and everything.
Okay. The next question is socket. How do you spell it, and is it the trademark name of the product?
Yes, SOCKITGEL, socket.
Okay.
And those of you who heard Dr. Hall speak a few days ago, last week, he talked about the science behind socket, how it works on periodontal disease. So if you can get a recording of that presentation, he'll go into it. He did an excellent job.
Very good. And I'm sure people can do that by getting a hold of Building Strength webinars. Is www.merlindental.com, is that your company website for socket?
Yes, it is.
That's what I thought.
McMillan.
Yeah, it's McMurlin.
McAnalley.
Yeah.
Oh, I have here.
No, it's Mac Merlin.
Okay, McMurlin. That's what I guess I mispronounced it.
Yeah.
Is socket available in Australia?
It's available in New Zealand, and we're looking at bringing it into Australia.
Great. Another question. Are certain people more prone to responding to the beneficial effects of AC mannan than others?
I'd say that's true. Like some people have, because they're really missing that, they're not getting mannose from any place, they just have a miraculous response. If someone is already getting a little bit, then they have less of a response.
Mm-hmm. And I think that question also can be addressed with depending on how healthy their probiotics are, because as we know, probiotics serves a lot of function for the for the digestion of those oligosaccharides and make it into mannose, and also using mannose to create short chain fatty acid for the proper body function.
Sure.
So all those things are part of the equation.
Okay, good. We're getting these answers pretty quickly. There's a question. I've read that many polysaccharides are in exotic plants, tubers, roots, etc. So would I get mannose or any of the other mentioned in other of nature's nutrients, any other plants other than aloe?
Yes, there are other plants that contain mannose, fucose, these other sugars. Aloe's, one of the most well-known plants.
Okay. I have a kind of unusual question here. Is low molecular weight injected heparin passed through breast milk? This person had to inject for 7 months to carry her son because of 2 clotting disorders. And she wants to know if that injected low molecular weight heparin passed through to her son by her breast milk.
They need to ask them. I think that question is better answered by by the physician that they're dealing with.
Sure, I sure agree with that.
That's the first time I've been asked that question.
I bet it is.
I'm sure you can go to the web though and probably find the answer.
Yes, go into Google and see if you can get the answer to that.
All right. That's a good question.
Another question: should probiotics be taken on an empty stomach? And before you give the answer, I've had people take them at bedtime because, to my thinking, there was less acid in your stomach at bedtime because it's farther from food and farther from food for breakfast. But should they be taken on an empty stomach?
Actually, if you look at it in a natural form, when baby get their probiotic, that it's through the daily process. They put things in their mouth and stick their finger in their mouth and all that. A lot of times, naturally we'll get some of those probiotics. So in reality, there's not necessarily a better time. But of course, if you want to be concentrated, in a better form, yeah, you're right. If you can avoid, acid and all that, certainly it will decrease the chance of, those probiotics being harmed and before they get into the lower GI tract.
Great. I have a real good question here. Is goat's milk able to supply the oligosaccharides and the things that we find in mother's breast milk?
Yeah, well, we've been looking at several different milks, and elephant milk would probably be good, as well as camel milk. So we've been looking at possibly developing formulas from camel and elephant milk. But cattle and sheep and goats, they don't compare to mother's milk.
Good.
I wonder if that may be why elephants are so smart.
I don't know, but
a lot of salicylic acid in their milk.
They do.
Yeah,
well, I tell you, I was in Africa for a while, and I'd take out a lot of life insurance before I'd try to milk an elephant. That could be hazardous to your health.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Is there a specific product name to ask for the vet about with obtaining AC Mannan?
Okay, well, I wouldn't encourage you to go and get the vet in trouble. If you have an animal that needs it, you can talk to him, and it's Ace Mannan immunostimulant. But he will know.
Yeah.
Just remember, they have to be approved, and you have to go through the approval process. But right now, if you really understand how it works, what happens, again, just to summarize, is if you don't have the right nutrients, your cells gradually lose structure and function, and they become aberrant. That doesn't mean they're diseased, but if you don't correct that, they can become diseased. So what you want to do is take all of your healthy cells and take the right nutrients and turn them back to healthy. Because sick cells have a finite lifetime. That means they only live so long. Then they'll die. So if you can take your healthy cells and maintain their health, then you'll either restore the health of the other cells or they will die. And so that's the way nature designed us to stay healthy, not to take drugs. Injecting it's hard to get animals to, to understand, they're meat eaters, like cats and dogs, and it's easier just to give them an injection.
Okay.
Especially if they're already sick. But if my dogs all get these micronutrients,
They take
Hey,
a,
Doctor,
go ahead.
you don't mind if I may interject here? Someone just sent a text to our section. So in the same vein, someone asked if there are references to products for pet use in the book. How do we refer these products to our pet?
Well, we talk about how they work in this book. And you can just tell your vet, actually we are developing some veterinary products with claims. And, we'll probably talk about those in the future. But right now, injectable leishmanian and the Merrick's disease vaccine, has been available. Although unless you have an outbreak of Merrick's disease, it's kind of like you need an outbreak of polio before you're going to start investing in iron lungs.
I got it. Another question. Is it better to get probiotics in a food source rather than in a capsule to ensure getting the active cultures?
Well, I think it's as long as you get them. As a general rule, you should take your supplements with food, as a general rule. I think your suggestion of taking friendly bacteria, when you're not digesting, maybe lower acid, I think there's some pluses and minuses to that. But there are friendly bacteria that make it through. They're protected by the food, and obviously they get through because the baby, when they lick their fingers and stuff, they can get friendly bacteria.
Sure. Okay. We have a request, Dr. McAnalley. A few people want to hear your story of your research and what you went through in the discovery of the AC Mannan and etc. They said maybe he would possibly share this the next time. Is that possible?
Well, that's a long story. I might have to share that in the third talk sometime. But,
I think that would be wonderful.
Yes.
It's been a great adventure. And having the greatest satisfaction was writing this book and seeing people reference our work, and then add to it. And I guess that's what every teacher wants is someone to take what you've taught and improve on it.
Well, we certainly recognize that you taught the world this technology because you were a pioneer of grand style. I have one question here. How much mannose is required to maintain a healthy mannose level for an adult or a child?
Well, we cover that in our book too.
Sure.
But basically, if you look at all the mannose in an average healthy adult, it's around 0.26 grams, which would be 26.8 milligrams. So what you want to do is maintain that. And in another chapter, we show that you absorb about 11% of it. So you would need to take every day around 0.3 grams, to maintain that blood concentration if you weren't getting it from any other source. So 0.3 grams is not a whole lot, but you would have to drink hundreds of bottles of some aloe and you still wouldn't get that much.
Sure. And it depends on the concentration in the product you're using.
Yeah. And also, I think, as we all know, also depending on each individual's condition at the time. Remember, we talked about, when somebody is ill, the body demand is a lot higher. Therefore, then the required amount will be different. And also, when you are stressful, living a stressful lifestyle, then the demand is also a little bit higher. So depending on a lot of different situations, So this is why I think the whole purpose of this book is to sort of let people start to think in a very, very natural way. They want to start to observe how nature is sort of operating in their everyday life. To sort of look into it and then sort of start to perform and then to live their life, trying to be as close to nature as possible. And that nature is not a static thing; it's a dynamic thing. So it's ever changing, and it's evolving also. So we need to sort of look at that all the time to sort of deal with the daily situation. Because as we change our environment and change our nature, then we create certain issue that we need to be aware of and then therefore address in a proper way to trying to combat that issue or trying to return the condition back to nature as best as possible to maintain our health.
Okay. I want to say that this book has been such an inspiration to me. I'm more excited than I've been in 2 years about this technology, and that's not an exaggeration. This is going to be my #1 book that I've read in 2009. I can tell you that. I have another question, and it's one of those that we answered by wellness reference, but I'll read it here as it came in. Have you seen the Aloe or the AC Mannan help with asthma?
Okay. If you want to just say whether AC Mannan, in my experience, I've seen that help asthma, yes. Okay. And I think I reserve the rest of them to the next talk by Dr. Bill McAnalley, talk about how does AC Mannan affect our body and how does this function, how does the mechanism, how does it work to maintain our structure and function. Therefore, they will reach their own conclusion of how it will help their body in various different situations.
Very good. Another question. Are any of the formula companies, these are the baby formulas, companies looking at adding the poly or mono or the oligosaccharides that they don't have in cow's milk to the formula?
Yes, I've been told that 2 or 3 companies are looking into adding some of these, especially with more and more evidence talking about the benefits of mother's milk. And there are many studies that show that fewer children, significantly number of children don't have asthma if they get mother's milk.
Right.
Like what was your experience in the Indian reservation?
The same. I was so impressed with the Indians and their babies being healthy and smart. I couldn't even understand it, and only until now do I really understand it. But, they weren't as sanitary as we are in our situation where we sterilize everything. And, they all breastfed. It was pretty near against their culture to use formula when I worked in the Indian reservations. And so it's just so evident that is the truth, and it's needed. There's another question. Is there value in cooking aloe with eggs?
Well, it's not going to hurt the eggs.
Aloe vera eggs.
It's not going to hurt the aloe either. So
okay.
You can bake this polysaccharide in bread, and only the outer brown bread, the browning on the outside is the only part that would lose any.
Wow, that's a pearl. Have you ever heard of the autoimmune disorder, and I know you have, Langerhans cell histocytosis, formerly known as histocytosis X? Has there been any known therapeutic use of this technology for this disorder? Again, another wellness situation.
Yeah. I think the same answer applies.
I think Dr. Marvin, you probably can answer that even better. Is that you have been working with the nutrigenomic, correct?
Sure.
And, yeah, and we have a lot of evidence now that nutrition can change a lot of different things and can change how gene express and gene pass on to the next generation. So all those things are part of something that we're looking forward to improve.
Yeah.
It is a complex situation.
Well,
In my experience, that healthy people need good nutrition to stay healthy, and sick people need it even more. That's just a general rule, regardless what's wrong with it.
Well, I've done a lot of research in nutrigenomics, and in fact, I'm going to Harvard this next October for a conference on nutrigenomics, and so I'm really excited about that field. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me, they could call me. Another question, how do you freeze-dry the aloe gel?
Okay, well, we discussed that in the book.
Right.
But basically, what we did was took the gel out, and we would use a pulp centrifuge like they use, the same one they use on orange juice to remove the pulp. We'd just spin it out, and then we would precipitate the polysaccharide. You can do that by changing the polarity of the water. And you can do it with salts, or you can do it with alcohol and other chemicals. But we precipitate it out, the polysaccharide, and then we freeze dried it. You can take the gel and use a orange juice concentrator to take some of the water out and then freeze dry it the rest of the way. Or you can just take it and freeze dry it. But the more water you take out by freeze drying, the more expensive it is.
Okay. That's about the end of all the questions. I did want to repeat the phone number. It's 1-800-755-0044, and be sure and let them know you heard of the book, The Science Behind Aloe, The Healing Plant by Dr. Bill H. McAnalley, Ph.D. You heard about that on tonight's seminar. And we look forward, again, Dr. McAnalley, till next week, when we cover the rest of the book.
I would like to just add one more thing. This is a hardcover book. A lot of the aloe books that are hardcover like this are much, much higher. And we wanted to make it as affordable. It's full of color. It has a lot of color illustrations. And it's a book that I think you would like to have on your coffee table and share with friends. So it's not a paperback book. It's a very nice book you would be proud to display. And I think they would make great gifts. So if you're looking for Christmas gifts or something, this is a great book that can help people understand how nature can help their health.
Great. I'm going to turn this over to David or Sherry, whichever one is to receive this. And I enjoyed this, and I want to encourage everybody to get this book, and it'd make a wonderful gift for people. It is a delightful book to read, and I've read it more than once.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marvin. Again, you've done a great job hosting this. We appreciate you. Actually, you've actually made some fans over here. Some people are asking for your phone number now. They want to talk to you. They love your soothing voice. I don't know what it is about your voice, but they just love it. So, again, we just want to thank you all for being here. Sherry, do you want to say anything about the forum? Because there seem to be lots of more questions that keep coming in. And we're thinking about setting up on our website a place where people can put in their questions, and then maybe Danny or Dr. McAnalley or Dr. John, whenever you can, just look at the questions and maybe answer them. But Sherry, is that feature ready yet?
Yes. On our website, one of the main tabs, it says Forum, and if you click on there, it's just like any other forum where you have to be register with our site, but even just with a free account. And then you can post in the forum. And David and I will put a few questions in there to get it started. And so that would be a great way for us to continue the discussion. If you have any questions about how to use it, just send us an email.
And you can give him my phone number, David.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and give my cell phone and my home phone.
Okay, great. We'll do that. Okay. Again, just want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us, Dr. McAnalley, especially to you for taking the time to do this. Dr. Sun, too, thank you so much. And we'll be looking out for we'll be looking forward to your webinar again next week. So I just want to say good night to everyone and God bless. Thank you.
God
Good night.
bless.
Good night.